Is the world as it should be? Is it as it should be? I don't think anyone would say yes unless they were totally naive or ignorant of what was going on in the world or even in our own community. I don't think anyone would say this world is as it should be. This world is fallen and broken. I probably don't have to convince you of that this morning. In fact, it can be overwhelming and distressing when we see all that's happening in the world, the violence and the evil and the wickedness in the world. In fact, it might lead us to ask the question, what in the world is this world coming to when we see all that's happening? But did you know this is nothing new? People of every generation have been asking these kind of questions and had to face this reality. Even in the Bible, we see it persistently throughout the scriptures. In the book of Job, they're dealing with this question. In the prophet Habakkuk and Jeremiah, where we are this morning, they're dealing with these questions. And several other places throughout the scriptures, they're grappling with the fact, God, if you are righteous and just, and you are, then why is the world like it is? Why is there so much evil and wickedness in the world? And why aren't you doing more about it? That's the question of people in the Psalms. Jeremiah is going to ask those very same questions. Lord, why do so many seem to get away with their unjust schemes, their deceitful plots, and sinful ways? When are they going to be held into account? When's something going to be done about all of this? Jeremiah asks these very questions to the Lord, and the Lord answers him. It's just not the answer Jeremiah was looking for. We find our text in Jeremiah chapter 12, verses 1 through 6 to begin with. This is the word of the Lord. You're always righteous, O Lord, when I bring my case before you. Yet I would speak with you about your justice. Why does the way of the wicked prosper? Why do all the faithless live at ease? You've planted them and they have taken root. They grow and bear fruit. You're always on their lips, but far from their hearts. Yet you know me, O Lord. You see me and test my thoughts about you. Drag them off like sheep to be butchered. Set them apart for the day of slaughter. How long will the land lie parched and the grass in every field be withered? Because those who live in it are wicked. The animals and birds have perished. Moreover, the people are saying, he won't see what happens to us. And then the Lord replies, starting in verse 5, if you have raced with men on foot, and they have worn you out, how can you compete with horses? If you stumble in safe country, how will you manage in the thickets by the Jordan? Your brothers, your own family, even they have betrayed you, and they have raised a loud cry against you. Don't trust them, though they speak well of you. The word of the Lord. Jeremiah has some tough questions for the Lord, but notice he's wise enough to acknowledge up front that the Lord's going to be right and he's going to be wrong. He's not afraid to address these questions to the Lord. He has the freedom to do so, but he knows up front, Lord, you're going to be in the right. I know that already as I bring my charges before you. The Message puts it, you are right, O God, and you set things right. I can't argue with that, but I do have some questions. I do have some questions. Why do bad people have it so good? You see, it's because the Lord is so just and righteous. It's because the Lord does not judge or make decisions on the basis of human standards that Jeremiah has a problem with all the wickedness that he sees. It's because he knows who the Lord is that he's asking these questions. This certainly includes the plots that we looked at last week where Jeremiah was told that there's people trying to kill him even from his own town, even from his own family, trying to kill him. It certainly includes this. But what he does now in chapter 12 is expand that to his culture as a whole. Why is all this happening, Lord? Why is there so much evil, injustice, and wickedness in the land? Jeremiah doesn't mention anything specific here, but he has to have in mind the idolatry and all its associated practices that he's already been addressing throughout the book of Jeremiah. But Habakkuk as some point out, a contemporary of Jeremiah, does get more specific with the Lord. He also sees all that's going on and addresses the Lord in the very same way. And in Habakkuk chapter 1, verses 1 through 4, he brings up some specifics to the Lord. Listen to what he says. How long, Lord, must I call for help, but you don't listen? Or cry out violence, but you don't save? Why do you make me look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrongdoing? Destruction and violence are before me. There's strife and conflict abounds. The law is paralyzed and justice never prevails. The wicked hem in the righteous so that justice is perverted. He got a little bit more specific, didn't he? And the message is, Lord, it shouldn't be this way. It shouldn't be this way. This isn't how the world should be. In fact, Jeremiah's complaint in our passage today suggests that there's been a reversal of the way things should be. Some point out he's probably alluding to Psalm chapter 1, and Jeremiah is saying what's true of the wicked is what should be true of the righteous. It's reversed, Lord. Here's what Psalm 1 says, Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked or stand in the way of sinners, the way that the sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That person, that is the righteous one, that person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yield its fruit in season, and whose leaves does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. Jeremiah's looking around and says, Lord, that's reversed here. It seems like the wicked, all these evildoers, they're the ones prospering. In fact, did you see verse 2? He uses that very same language about a tree. They're the ones you planted, and they have taken root. They grow and bear fruit, not the righteous. And to Jeremiah, that shouldn't be the way it is. And he even points out the hypocrisy to the Lord as if the Lord didn't know about it. He points out the hypocrisy and says, Lord, isn't this evident to you? He points out how the wicked can even appear or have the appearance of godliness, but in their hearts they're far from God. They talk about you, God, but their hearts are far from you. That's so evident to me, Lord. It should be even more so to you, the implication is that Jeremiah states. Alex Verghese says, the claim of being known and seen and tested by Yahweh indicates total transparency and integrity on the part of Jeremiah. He's saying he's innocent of wrongdoing. Underlying this claim of innocence is the protest that in spite of his integrity, there's a plot against him. And then others point out, the other side of that is, God, don't you see what they're doing? They're getting away with this. Why aren't you doing anything about it? Why aren't you doing more about it? I don't see what you're doing. Can you please help me? Because it seems like the pervasiveness of wickedness and evil just continues, and it doesn't seem like it's ever going to end. That's what Jeremiah is grappling with. Habakkuk is grappling with. The psalmist grapples with that. Others in Scripture, and maybe some of us as well. Jeremiah is asking, how can this be? This isn't right. As if that wasn't enough to share to the Lord, Jeremiah says, let me buttress my argument here, Lord, my case here, Lord. Let me buttress this with some more evidence. And verse 4, he says, this world, as we see all this evil being rooted in the land is getting ruined. Verse 4. He says the vegetation has failed. There's no more rain. The animals and the birds even are dying. Lord, don't you see how this is affecting the whole land even? And then worst of all, and this is the one that kind of stood out to me, worst of all, Jeremiah is saying, these people, the wicked people, the evildoers, these who don't care about you at all, they are doing all this thinking they're going to get away with it because they think you don't and won't do anything about it. In fact, verse 4, the Message puts it, they even brag, or the CV puts it, they even brag, God can't see the sins we commit. So Jeremiah is unsettled about all this happening because there is a total disregard for what God thinks. Sound familiar? And he's upset about it. Why are the wicked so prosperous? Why are evil people so happy? We could probably ask the same questions in our day. We could probably say some of the same things about the world now. Injustice, evil, wickedness abounds. This world isn't as it should be. The evidence quickly stacks up if we think about it for too long. Evidence that this world isn't as it should be. Think of the wars that are going on in this world. The war between Russia and Ukraine, I saw this week, I looked into it. The estimated total of people dead from both sides together, either wounded or dead, in the Russia-Ukraine conflict is approximately 1 million people. 1 million people. That's a lot of people. That's an example. The continuing unrest and conflict in the Middle East following the terrorist group Hamas's brutal attack on Israel on October 7th is another example. This shouldn't be. That kind of thing shouldn't happen. Those kind of brutalities and tragedies should not happen. That kind of wickedness should not happen. And then we see the rampant anti-Semitism on university campuses and in protests. And then just this week, did you see a couple who were about to be engaged, who were here as part of the Jewish embassy and who were attending a Jewish conference of the American Jewish Committee. Their names, I hope I'm getting this right. Aaron Lachinsky, age 30, and Sarah Lynn Milgram were gunned down as they exited that conference in that museum. That shouldn't be. That kind of thing shouldn't happen. I hope you agree with that. But even if we shrunk the parameters down from the world to even our own little community of Grandview, we still couldn't say that everything's right and just in the world, in our own little world, in our own little community. If we want to extend that to Belton and wherever else, Pleasant Hill and wherever else we live, even if we extended it to just, or shrunk it down to our community, the Kansas City area, we still couldn't say that things are right and just. We still couldn't say that things are as they should be. If you're not convinced, let me stack up a little bit of evidence for you then. Just last week or the week before last, Josh Rush's car was broken into. The criminals broke in the back window, even though the door was unlocked. So I guess they weren't the smartest of criminals. But they broke the back window out, tried to hotwire the car. They couldn't do it, but they left the mess. They left the repair to be done. They left this feeling of, well, I'm not sure that I'm safe. I'm not sure that I shouldn't be more alert about what's going on around me. Those kind of things shouldn't happen. People shouldn't violate other people's space and property and destroy things. What happened at Cloverleaf Apartments is another example. You've been hearing us talk about that, or if you look at our prayer calendar, you know about some of what's been going on. But Cloverleaf Apartments lost their funding from the Housing and Development Department of Government, HUD it's called, February 1st. The residents were told that they were losing that funding because of what the owner was doing. They were misappropriating funds. They weren't using those funds to keep up the property, so it became very, very unsafe. And I have some pictures of what it looked like just earlier this year, if you would show some of those things. This isn't just water from the winter storm. That's a river from a water main break that had been flowing for months and flooding the apartments, and nobody would do anything about it. The next one there, Ron, there's just broken windows and the building's deteriorating. It was very unsafe and unlivable. And then the next one, they didn't have anybody picking up their trash because they weren't being paid. So it was just piling up in these unsafe and unlivable conditions. That shouldn't be. Now, the owner was charged in these other places that they own properties, but that didn't help the people who were suffering from their negligence and their misappropriation of funds. And what happened was it fell on the residents. What happened was the Kansas City Fire Department condemned the complex, but only gave them 48 hours to move all their stuff and find a new place to live. Could you do that? Could you move everything you have and find a new place in 48 hours? No. They were just forced to move. It wasn't their fault that all this was happening. And it would, I hope, lead us to say that shouldn't be happening. And it might lead us to ask the question, what is this world coming to when all this kind of stuff is happening in our world? Maybe you could give your own personal examples this morning. 2 Timothy 3 warns of days like this, gives us some of the reason why some of this might be happening. Here's what it says: you must understand this, that in the last days distressing times will come. Why is this happening? For people will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderers, brutes, haters of the good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. And we might wonder, well, no wonder the world is the way it is. Jeremiah is troubled by the apparent prosperity of the wicked in his day. And he has a suggestion for God. He has a suggestion of what God could do to take care of the problem. Like the psalmist, if you go through there's a lot of psalms that call God to bring down curses on people. And that's what Jeremiah does for the wicked. Not just the people plotting against him, but all the wickedness that he sees. God, take care of it. He says, lead them like lambs to be butchered. He wants them all killed. That's his suggestion. That's how upset he is about it. And I hope we would share that anger about what's happening in the world in so many ways. Not necessarily his suggestion, but the source of it. And he says, Lord, I want you to take them and set them apart like sheep to the slaughter. Now, Jeremiah had already been told that God was going to do that with the people plotting against him. But now he says, I want to see all of them gone. I want to see all of them dead. The Message puts verse 4 this way: make them pay for for the way they live, pay with their lives like sheep marked for the slaughter. How long do we have to put up with this? The country is depressed, the farmers are in ruin, and all this because of the wickedness, these wicked lives. That's Jeremiah's suggestion. That's part of Jeremiah's prayer. And the Lord answers Jeremiah. But it's not what Jeremiah had asked for. His answer isn't what Jeremiah asked for. Instead, Jeremiah is told that if he thinks the wickedness now is bad, just wait. Just wait. It's going to get worse. That's what he's told initially. That's the first answer he gets through these metaphors of running with people and running with horses, of running in safe country versus the thickets of the Jordan. He's saying if you think it's hard now when you're just running against people, think of how hard it would be to run against horses. He's given an indication that this is just it's going to get worse, Jeremiah is told. Alex Verghese explains God's answer, but also highlights the hope in God's answer. Listen to what he says. The questions in verses 5 and 6 about the running and the thickets and against horses are metaphors that compare the present with what lies ahead. Each question is aimed to portray the future that will be extremely difficult and troublesome for the prophet. What's important here is that God responds to the prophet's troubling questions. Perhaps not with the answer the prophet had hoped for, and to hear, but with an answer that conveyed to the prophet the reality of God's presence with him every step of the way. He can't trust his own human brothers, but he can certainly trust God. I hope we'll take that to heart. That even if there isn't another trustworthy soul, another person that we could trust, hopefully there is. Hopefully we have many people we can trust and confide in. But even if there weren't, Jeremiah can trust God. And even if things are not as they should be yet, we can trust God that he knows, that he has a plan, that he is at work. We can trust him. That's only the first part of the answer. In verses 7 through 13 that I didn't read, the Lord also reveals, he's going to deal with the wicked in the land. All the idolatry, all the associated practices, all the wickedness. He's going to deal with that by sending the Babylonians and sending Judah into exile. That's what's going to happen. Now Habakkuk, Jeremiah's contemporary, he doesn't like that answer either. It's not stated how Jeremiah responds to that answer, but Habakkuk does not like that answer either, because he says, if you think Judah is bad and wicked, Babylon is much worse, Lord. Why would you use Babylon to discipline your people when they're much worse? He didn't like that answer either. But through a series of woes to the wicked, the Lord assures Habakkuk and all those who live by faith, listen, that the ways of the wicked will perish, even though now they seem to prosper. He's affirming the truth of Psalm chapter 1. Jeremiah says, no, that's reversed, Lord. Everything's backwards here. The wicked are the ones who prosper. The wicked are the ones who are bearing fruit. But your righteous ones, they're being silenced and hemmed in. But the Lord is reminding him through Habakkuk, no, it just seems that way now, but wait. It will be all taken care of. The Lord will set all things right. The Babylonians will not get away with what they're going to do. Jeremiah is given that same message in Jeremiah 50 and 51. And that would be cheered. It's always cheered throughout the Old Testament when Israel's enemies are defeated or there's judgment pronounced on them. But that even isn't the Lord's final answer. And they're not going to like the last answer either. Look at verses 14 through 17. This is what the Lord says. As for all my wicked neighbors who seized the inheritance that I gave my people Israel, I will uproot them from their lands and uproot the house of Israel from among them. But after I uproot them, I will again have compassion and bring each of them back to his own inheritance and his own country. And if they learn well the ways of my people and swear by my name, saying, as the Lord surely lives, even as they once taught my people to swear by Baal, then they will be established among my people. But if any nation does not listen, I will completely uproot it and destroy it, declares the Lord. They would cheer that first part. Oh yeah, our enemies are going to be uprooted and destroyed. But then there's the second part. But after that, the Lord is going to extend his mercy even to them and invite them to be part of his covenant people. That would be hard to deal with. The CEV puts it, I gave this land to my people Israel, but enemies around it have attacked it and robbed it, so I will uproot them. Yes, from their countries, just as I will uproot them. But then he goes on to say, but after that I will extend compassion to them and invite them. They have to respond. It's not automatic. He's going to invite them to declare that the Lord is sovereign alone, that God is God alone. And if they will turn from their idolatries, they're the ones who taught Israel to worship Baal. If they will turn from their idolatries, the Lord is even promising them mercy and compassion. You see, part of what's going on here is the people of Israel and Judah are learning that God is more compassionate and merciful than they are, but also more compassionate and merciful towards others than they are. And here's how it might apply to us. We sometimes forget that we don't deserve God's mercy and grace either. But he still extends it to us We don't deserve it. You know, Habakkuk was saying, Judah's more righteous than Babylon, maybe so, but in God's eyes, we're both in need of mercy and compassion and grace. And without that, there is no salvation. We can't compare ourselves with others pretending that we're better than other people. No, we're all on the same level playing field. We all need God's grace. That's what they're grappling with here. This also isn't according to how Jeremiah prayed. It's not what he prayed for. But God reveals how gracious and compassionate he is. Alex Verghese says, sometimes a different answer from God to our specific request may be what we need to hear, not want to hear. Oh man, there's been lots of answers to prayer I didn't want. How about you? But need to hear, to face difficult challenges in life and gain new perspectives about life. And I would add also the character of God, about who God is. We learn more about who God is through these challenges and difficulties. And that applies beyond our prayers for the brokenness of this world, the injustice of the world. This goes beyond just the problems that we see in this culture and the ways we're praying about it. It comes back to this point that invites us to take Jeremiah's same approach, who had deference and humility before the Lord, who said at the very beginning, I know I'm not going to be right on this, Lord. I already know in advance. I'm telling you that in advance. This humility that says, Lord, you're in the right, I'm not. Because we don't know all the information, do we? We don't know all the details. We don't know all the aspects. We don't know all the circumstances. We don't know all the people involved. And we have to say to the Lord, I'm trusting you. Jeremiah also says, but you, Lord, oh Lord, know me. Or we might add, as Jesus taught us to pray, your will be done. Your will be done. Your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. So Jeremiah may not get the answer he wants, but he gets an answer. But what Jeremiah does in response to everything he sees is the right answer, is the right move. That is, he brings it to the Lord in prayer. Because it is in the Lord that we have hope that every evil, wickedness, and injustice will be dealt with by God. He is our ultimate hope. It may not pan out through the judicial system. It may not pan out because of the law of this and this, but we know at the end of the day, God, when it's in his hands, it will be dealt with. There will be justice. Everything will be made right, and all things will be made new. That's good news. In other words, that's what the world is ultimately coming to. The fulfillment of all of God's promises. Here's some of them. The Lord promises to bring a new heavens and a new earth, what? Where righteousness is at home, 2 Peter. Where righteousness is at home. That's a good promise. Righteousness and justice are the foundation of his throne, so the Lord promises that all things will be made right and made new, Revelation 21. The Lord promises to wipe every tear from our eyes and that death will be made no more. The Lord promises that we'll be forever with the Lord. That's what this world is coming to. That's our hope. I shared this several times with you before about something that Lois Jones shared when she was in a difficult season of her life. She was grappling with all that was happening, and she was asking questions like, Lord, why don't we know more about these promises that will come to fruition when we will be with you forever? Why don't we know more about these things? More details about it. She brought that prayer to the Lord. And the Lord, as only the Lord could answer, answered her, Lois, if you knew what I had in store for those who love me, you would lose the will to live. That's how great our hope is. Guaranteed hope, by the way, not wishy-washy, not wishful thinking, not it may or may not happen. This is guaranteed hope. All those things I listed. On the character of God's faithfulness. Those things will happen. I hope that hope encourages you. I also invite us to respond in a couple different ways this morning. On that insert that I've given you this morning, I've given you some questions about what we've been talking about this morning based on a devotional I wrote on this several years ago, some of the questions I was grappling with and invite you to grapple with. Here's some questions, and as we listen to a song here in a moment, I'll invite you to spend some time with these questions, and then I hope you'll take it with you as well if there's more time needed. But can you recall a time in your life when you received an answer to the prayer, but it wasn't the answer you were hoping for or asking for? You can write about that. Dr. Verghese suggests that when that happens, when God gives us a different answer than the one we were answering or asking for, it may be that we needed to hear that answer to face difficult challenges in life and gain new perspective about life and who God is. So what about those perspectives did you gain? Or maybe you're in the midst of it now. Maybe you can make that part of your prayer. Lord, what do you want me to see? What do you want me to see about life and about who you are? What are you trying to teach me? Now that's a mature take and approach to life's difficulties, because that isn't easy. But it's what we're called to. The Lord Jesus prayed, "Not my will, but your will be done." How can we incorporate a trusting submission to the Father in our prayer life? It's easy and we love to make suggestions to God. But can we submit those to Him and say, "Lord, we trust you. Your will be done." And then this last one is very important, because our response to the evil and wickedness in the world isn't to isolate ourselves and say, okay, I need to escape from all that. I want to get away from all that. I want to pretend that it's not happening. The question is, what is the Lord asking of us to get involved in to be His agents of hope, light, righteousness, and peace in response to all the evil and wickedness in the world? How will we allow our light to shine in this world? You know, I told you about Cloverleaf Apartments. Salt and Light Ministry walked with those families and still are all through that trial and tribulation in a myriad of ways, and are still doing so. What is the Lord calling us to? Because it isn't to just hide in these four walls. It isn't to pretend that those things aren't happening. It isn't to say, okay, that's their problem, not mine. No, the church is in the world to be His hands and feet. We're going to listen to a song, the lyrics of which are on the back. It picks up on all of this that we've been discussing today. And I would invite you to spend that time listening to the song, writing some responses here. But Ron, if you'd play that song for us, let's do that.